The Chiropractic Philanthropist, episode 247.
I started to embrace the fact of what is the blessing in this? Because who could find a blessing when your firstborn, your daughter, is diagnosed with cancer?
Starting your own practice is hard for many chiropractors. It's riddled with both struggles and successes. But here at the Chiropractic Philanthropist, we make it easy by having chiropreneurs and entrepreneurs share their struggles and lessons learned in life and business so that you don't have to make the same mistakes. And now here's your host, Dr. Ed Osborne.
My guest today on the Chiropractic Philanthropist is Dr. Charles Francis. Dr. Francis is a wellness expert. His passion, however, is in business development and entrepreneurship. In 2014, he decided intentionally to sell his 15-year high-volume chiropractic office to combine all of his skill sets with his entrepreneurial passion. In 2015, he opened the Integrative Health Centers of Charlottesville, where his goal is to help the world shed 1 million pounds in 1 million minutes. He's developed an integrative system that incorporates his passion for bringing health to others while having financial and physical freedom from his office. His mission is to bring this integrative system, business structure, and principles to other professionals and enable them to reach their full potential personally, professionally, and financially while obtaining ultimate balance to their lives and the lives of those around them. All right, let's go ahead and thank our sponsor for today's episode, and that is chiroclicker.com. Chiropractors, if you see lots of kids and families in your office, you will know that at times kids grab your adjusting instrument to help them adjust mom or even the teddies in the office. Have you ever thought that someone should make a kid's toy and have an adjusting instrument just for them? Now with the all-new ChiroClicker, kids can play chiropractors in your office and at home. TCP listeners get 10% discount by using the code TCP10. That's TCP10. Head over to chiroclicker.com. ChiroClicker, nurturing the next generation of chiropractors.
Doing awesome. How are you?
I'm incredible. This is, you and I in this pre-chat talking about how amazing life is when you start to make the shift to less effort and helping serve more people through, online and entrepreneurial businesses. And it's just crazy stuff. So I'm excited about this conversation today. But for those who don't know you, tell us a little bit about you. Tell us also about, the way you practiced, and then also what you're doing today, your business.
I've been in chiropractic almost 20 years now. I graduated, it's not exactly 20 years, 1998, I had graduated from life. And I went out and I worked in the CBP world, the corrective world, up with Tony and Dwight DeGeorge up in Boston. And then I opened up my own practice. And since then, I was seeing a high volume corrective practice, both chiropractor. And just from there, we worked really hard. We were a cash practice. And that's how my career began. And I didn't realize that I had a strong entrepreneurial bone in my body. But I did that for many, many years. And just came to a point in a juncture in my life when it was a combination of things where I wanted more out of my life. I wanted to give more and serve more, but also realize what I was doing was extremely limited in my reach, because I realized that we weren't shifting people. We were seeing people come in and out. Even though we were changing lives in the moment, it wasn't something that was sustainable. My body was starting to hurt. Seeing 600, 800 people a week for that many years. And then I realized that the mission is to save lives, but I realized in the same thing, I was losing myself. I was losing my family because I wasn't as connected with them, because we were talking about this earlier, how I was always in the practice, even when I was home, just because it took that much effort and energy just to sustain something like that. Even though from the outside I was very successful, on the inside, something was clamoring for more. And I wasn't really quite sure what that was at that juncture. And then I went through a couple of periods in my practice life, and I realized I got that voice within saying, hey, it's time to make that shift. And the long story short was that I called my wife, and it was in October. I was at a seminar. It was not in a chiropractic arena. And I had some moments of clarity, and I felt congruent with myself. And I called her and said, we're going to sell everything, and we're going to move to where I live today. And she was so excited. And long story short, by the time December rolled around, I got scared. And I said, I have it too easy. Like, why am I giving up this great practice? And I believe this is my calling. This is what I'm supposed to do. How can I let that go? So I got this brilliant idea to try to manage it from a distance and do all these other things. And the long story short was, talk about obstacles that came in my life. From that moment till March was another tough stretch for me. Just crap came in my life. And I remember driving down the road, and here's one of the turning moments, is I was talking to a mentor of mine, and I heard that voice again. I didn't hear my mentor. And I just knew at the moment I was incongruent what I was already called to do. And not to live by other standards, and to live by my standard, and the standard I believe I was called to be. And so, long story short, I got off the phone with him, and I literally put the practice up for sale that second. Like, it was within 3 hours. And I knew it was right. We ended up selling our practice in less than 3 months. And that's transition everything. Mm-hmm. We only had 3 patients matriculate out, period. And I ended up selling my house in 30 days, and I sold everything. I owned nothing. I felt like a freaking college kid with no responsibility. But I had no job. I just knew that it was something I was supposed to do. So we picked up and moved to Virginia, where I live. I live in the mountains of a town of 5,000 people. And how do I go from a city boy to that? And that was part of my journey I actually committed to taking a full year off, even though it made no financial sense. I didn't have a plan, except I needed to figure out what that thing was calling me to do. And in that time, I went through some great places and some really dark places. And where people think you have it off, you have all this time, I had financial resources, but it was something I had to walk on alone. And actually that matriculation of going and finding out to own yourself, and realizing the biggest point I got out of the whole time was that I'm not broken. I actually was living below my standards by living by other people's standards, other industries, other chiropractors, listening to what is shared by practice management groups of who you're supposed to be and what you're supposed to stand for. And the fact that if you didn't do those things, you were not a full-fledged chiropractor. And shedding that, I tell you what, is so liberating. And that's when I began this new chapter of my life. And I tell you what, it's freaking, I'm trying to keep my words calm here, but it's freaking awesome. I think I have one of the coolest lives going right now. I work 2.5 days a week. I spend so much time with my family. I don't ever miss events. I don't miss sporting events. I don't miss time at school. Like, when we're done, I'm heading out to my kid's school to do an after school center and just volunteer my time because I got it. And my thing is, how do I change more people's lives? And not to mention, my income is 4 to 5-fold what I ever made doing just strictly chiropractic. At the same time, I've never diminished my ability to serve people and change their lives, because I realized my definition is a life changer, not just an adjuster. And when that shifted for me, along with everything else, my whole life, did a 180.
Wow. I mean, I got to tell you, you're speaking my language. Well, because
I resonate with you, man.
But it's like such an incredible narrative. It's almost like exactly what the process that I went through, maybe at a just a different level or a different frequency. But I want to ask you. I just want to come back to a few of those things that you mentioned. One of them being that you listen to the voice. I like that. We talk about the voice, right? So you listened to the voice. You acted, right? You weren't crippled. You weren't paralyzed. You acted. You listened to the voice, and look what happens. It's incredible, right?
It is, and more than I expected. So even though I couldn't see it, it's profound, and to realize like that, what happens is we dumb that voice down because of what we think other people will perceive of us if we listen to it, because it may be out of their normal, but it's exactly where you're supposed to be. And I tell you, I don't think I'm going to ever ignore that voice. And if it calls me another place, I'm willing to move, and I'm not tied to anything I'm doing except tied to serving people.
Yeah. Yeah. I was always afraid of how I would be judged by by others in my profession, my colleagues, and I mean, I still see it and hear it these days, and there'll always be judgment. That's our job. We judge, right? So we do this. I mean, everyone judges. That's our job, right?
Yeah.
So I mean, that was part of the things that really kind of maybe turned down the dial in terms of speed and implementing these things. But you and I, we're not suggesting that chiropractors step out of practice completely. We're just suggesting that they look at having other diversified ways to create income and cash flow in their life and help and serve more people, right?
Absolutely. I mean, and if I were to look back on certain things, I think there was a blessing in me making that transition, but I don't believe that transition I did was necessarily right for everybody. I actually think it's probably in the minority. I think you can find everything where you are, and knowing that where you are is where you're supposed to be, and just embracing that part of you and owning it, just owning yourself and being great where you are, and the doors will continue to open. And then how do you find that diversity so that if you don't have that balance, how do you achieve it? Because you deserve it. And a lot of people just ignore it or to push it down.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, making this transition was partly out of survival and necessity. And when I say the transition, I mean transitioning to practicing online. I still consider I'm practicing chiropractic. It's still the message. I'm helping more chiropractors express the message of health and healing. However, I mean, it's just a different way of doing it. And I wouldn't suggest that everyone do it this way. Doc, we'd love to talk about quotes, affirmations. Do you have some words of meaning you would like to share with doctors today?
Yeah, I just hung on to this statement, and I can explain a little bit more about it once I say it. But I always ask, what is the gift in this moment? What is the blessing in this moment? And quite frankly, it's easy to find the blessing and the gift when something's really cool and awesome, and you expected it and you planned it, and yeah. But when the crap hits the fan, and nothing seems to be really great in your life, or there's a lot of really big things hanging out there. Like you just went through something with your mom. What is the blessing in that? What's the gift in this? And we talked about that briefly before another time, but that's what I found. And when my daughter was sick, so here I am, I'm living the chiropractic life. My kids are not vaccinated. We eat clean organically. We exercise. We get adjusted. Their spines are great. And my daughter's diagnosed with cancer. Right? And so what a kick in the pants, what a kick in the balls. And here you are, somewhat embarrassed by it, because here I am preaching it from here's how you kill cancer, here's how you do this, here's the adjustment, here's all the stuff, and here's one of the loves of my life is sick, and as a man and a father and a chiropractor, I can't protect her.
Yeah.
What did I do wrong? What's going on with this scenario? And I started looking at that, and then the judgment from our profession saying, well, you should have given this supplement, and you didn't adjust it right, and the atlas was on the other side, and And so long story short, we dug in and we continued to live by our standard. We had people telling us, great, you had her for 6 years type of deal, and rejected by our family, rejected by our profession. And long story short, we went still a natural route. I'm proud to say my daughter just turned 12. She's healthy, clean bill of health, no cancer in her body. But we had to take some really strict means of doing that and stepping into that space. And that's when that happened. I started to embrace the fact of what is the blessing in this? Because who could find a blessing when your firstborn, your daughter, is diagnosed with cancer? And quite frankly, the blessing, one of the greatest blessings is it because we were able to help her heal. You know how many people I've walked through cancer and can look them in the eye and say, I'm fire tested with you. I know what you're feeling. I know what it is. There's no promises in this journey, but I tell you what, the outcomes are so great that I would walk on this side of the fence if I were you, and I'll be willing to walk with you and never judge you anyway. And I couldn't tell you that was one of the things I could tell you from the bonds of love that the worry about tomorrow isn't such a worry. Mm-hmm. The financial worries, the practice going down, who gives a rat's tail? The reality is every day is a gift. And even if it doesn't seem like a gift, there's something in it if you seek it and mine for it. And I've truly anchored to that. And so even when I was in those dark places and sold my practice, didn't even know what I was going to do next, I hung to that. And here I am today.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and I love that. I hope the docs who are listening today, they're really soaking that in, that, in every moment, even though it's so hard sometimes to see what that gift really truly is, there is a gift in those. I mean, I can tell you, like when I was diagnosed and with severe Crohn's disease, and my family, what it put them through, and myself physically, and my wife, and yeah, it was very very trying times. But I'll tell you one thing, that it made me a better chiropractor when I walked away. Yeah, because honestly,
That's great.
I didn't get it. I didn't understand. Someone would come into my practice, if they weren't well, they weren't healthy, they, whatever, quote unquote diagnosis they had. I didn't empathize. I didn't get it. Boy, I sure got it after I got the message.
And that's the gift, and that's one of the gifts. And now in that realm, people can't question what I did. It's easy to flap your gums, but when push comes to shove, are you congruent?
Yeah.
And I'm not, judging anyone for being congruent or not congruent, but you come in and then you have empathy for someone, and then you weren't just like, oh, you got the adjustment right, or you missed it. You're, 35 years late for your first adjustment. Well, they're in front of you. Love them.
Yeah.
Give them a gift of adjustment and healing, and serve them wherever they are. Meet them where they're at instead of tell them where you think they need to be. We push more people away when we should be hugging them.
Yes. Yeah. And I mean, I got to tell you, I mean, that level of understanding, just personally for me, and just being a better chiropractor, because I just, yeah, when, because it's really easy to almost come off as judgmental. We'll use that word again, judgmental of people. Like, I remember like being in practice going, I hear a pill bottle, I'm going to search it out and take it, it just, now I have far more understanding of those things, and I'm just more lenient, just more understanding typically of that stuff. But yeah. So let's do this. I'd love to transition into, something that's just going on, just incredible for you right now. Like something that you're just so super excited about in this current moment.
It's what I'm doing. I mean, I literally every night, I don't know if you know the feeling when you get up and you go on vacation, you haven't been on vacation in a while, and you wake up and you're so excited. I live in that state right now because of what I'm doing and how I'm living, and it's that congruent model. And not to mention, I'm able to influence so many lives, because going back to my purpose of, again, being a chiropractor is, someone asked me this. They said, the biggest impact you've made on someone's life, was it through an adjustment or is it through other means? And I really paused on that because I always thought the adjustment was the most critical piece. And I'm not saying it's not, but what I am saying though is that I realized more lives were influenced by sometimes the kind word I said, something I said outside the practice, something I stood for them. I had a couple that was dealing with cancer, and I had all this equipment in my garage, and I gave them the keys to my garage. I said, come in, do what you have to do. I know they don't have the resources. And just that moment of being a friend but I still impacted their lives. And those are the things that come back. And so now what I'm doing is I'm doing in the nutrition arena. And I realized so many years in chiropractic, I was doing nutrition talks and workshops to kind of get people over to chiropractic.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
I found that what do people want? And can I still teach them the principle the body heals from above down and inside out? And one of the principles is you need nourishments. So I've been doing that, and we've just exploded. I mean, absolutely exploded. I have doctors contact me, literally across, the United States saying, what are you doing, Charlie? What's happening? How can I get part of that? And that's really the world I'm at right now, is taking our model and getting to other doctors so they have this ability to influence lives from a nutritional note, find that freedom in their day, where it's not as cumbersome, and not lose the chiropractic. And really, quite frankly, 1/4 of our patients want chiropractic. They come in, and then I have to refer them now. I injured myself in a different way. I ruptured my bicep. My arm is still not right. It was years of serving many people. I did take care of myself, but there was failure. And I just don't have the speed or the strength to adjust like I used to, nor the volume. So now I send them down the road, because why don't they need an adjustment? So, I mean, if I had that here, my chiropractic practice would be equally as large as my nutrition practice based on that. It's very interesting, and they're asking me for it. I'm not even telling them that they need it to check the thyroid for the nerve, or the digestive tract for their lower back or whatnot. So that's been one of the coolest things that I've been able to do. And then also too, providing a stream of income for my family that allows us the luxury of doing things that most people have on their bucket list. And I've been able to start kicking my bucket list around a little bit more lately. And it comes from a true place of gratitude, not from a place of I don't know. Just from
Yeah.
that podium, I don't ever want to be that, and I'd be just as happy without the stuff, quite frankly.
And so we can put also into the show notes a way that docs can actually connect with you via like basically a questionnaire that the
Yeah. So one of the things I've accelerated is I love being in business. I love the entrepreneurial state of mind. And I found a lot of doctors either struggle with that or they think they're entrepreneurs and they're really missing some really key things. So yeah, so what I did was I put together the top 5 critical things that most entrepreneurs screw up on. I put that in there and also to a business survey, just so that you can really look at your practice as a business. Now, that's where you keep the hands separate. You love your patients, but the fact is, if you don't have the money, you can't keep your doors open. I was there at points in my career where I was cleaning the processor. I didn't have the 75, $150 to clean it. I was spending times at night filing and doing things, and I was understaffed and overworked and stressed out because I didn't have the resources to have that time. And so to look at, and I realized a lot of them were just some simple business mistakes where I left tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of dollars on the table by not doing these simple things. And so I included that as just a simple download. And I want to share that with all of your listeners because I think it'd be very helpful. And also did a survey in there so that you can actually quantify really where you're at. And when I did that a while back, I was kind of shocked because I thought I was stronger in certain areas than I was, and enlightening, to say the least.
Very cool. So, listeners, you can actually head to the show notes of this episode. So, if you're listening on your mobile, you can expand open those show notes right now, and you'll actually find that link and get the 5 most costly mistakes entrepreneurs make. And you can actually download that. I'm going to go out and download that as soon as I can too, and take
You
the
might be
survey.
surprised, huh?
Hey, if I can save a couple $1,000s a month, I'll do that. And then also, we're going to have a webpage dedicated to our discussion today. So you can head over to thechiropracticphilanthropist.com and get direct access to those clickable links. All right, Doc. So before we kind of start wrapping things up today, it's really all about giving back and about advice. You've already dropped huge knowledge bombs on docs, but I want to take you and put you in the TCP time machine. I don't know if you know, we have a time machine here. And so it's kind of cheesy, but we do have one. And so we're going to send you back to a younger version of yourself. This is right after you came out of chiropractic college. You have all the current life and practice experience that you have today. What
Yeah.
would you say to that younger self?
Relax. Absolutely just relax and be your authentic self. I realized that so often, very at the beginning of the career, I used to wear a tie, I'd wear the shirt, and I was trying to be the doctor versus being myself. And I realized that the things that people love about each other is your imperfections. And that's what's most attractive to people. No one likes perfection. And trying to at least even appear perfect or you have your shit together. And the thing about what I realized about leadership is you just have to be one step ahead of the person behind you to help them. You don't have to be perfect. You don't have to own the whole thing. And that thing of just being yourself and relaxing and just letting that voice come through and follow that is simple advice, but I think very profound personally, at least for me.
I love it. Thank you. And before I also wrap things up for us in this call, what would you say is an invaluable resource other than what we're giving doctors here today as their download? But what else? I mean, is there something that you're listening to that all docs should listen to, something you're reading right now?
That's a great question. And I try not to read too much, quite frankly. I'm not an avid reader. I'm more of a listener and a watcher and things of that nature. So I don't really have a pure recommend. I would say, hey, listen, watch this or do this or transform that. But what I would say is constantly put yourself in front of people who are doing things bigger and better than you. And there's so many diamonds that you could pick up from that. And I think that's the keynote. I constantly listen to stuff no matter where I am. I'm listening and growing and trying to find, I'm not even trying to find something. I'm just trying to experience something and let it speak to me and then let it roll from there. Because I have my unique gifts. And when I hear something, I usually write down what it speaks to me, not what was said.
Mm-hmm.
And there's another great thing in there.
Beautiful. Yeah, and thank you for that. And so again, listeners, you can head over to thechiropracticphilanthropist.com and we will have that webpage dedicated to our discussion today with Dr. Charles Francis. We're going to also have that downloadable PDF and with the survey as well. I think it's a PDF, so it's a 5 most costly mistakes entrepreneurs make, and I'll be getting that download as well myself. Now, before we leave, I just want to thank you so much for being on the show. I got to tell you, Doc, I love it when docs come onto the show and they're just real. Like, look, I don't care how much success you've had. I don't care what you've been through. Like, I mean, they just tell the truth. And I think that's when other doctors, listeners, really resonate with that. And it's a real rags to riches kind of story. I like that. And the amount of wealth that you've created in your life is really inspiring. And when I say wealth, I mean like with your family, like that family time. I posted the other day, I was like, man, I'm so rich. And it's just like I get to wake up with my kids, walk them to school and all these things. And I want more chiropractors to experience that lifestyle that you and I have created. So thank you so much for giving back. That's my long-winded thank you.
Thank you for having me. I mean, it's as much as a pleasure for me to be here and be able to share. And I do wish that our fellow brothers and sisters in chiropractic get to have that. For many years, I didn't. And that is why I do agree. We always joke in our house that we are so rich beyond measure. And it's nothing to do with finances. It has to do everything about who we are and what we're living and what we're expressing rather than what's in the bank account.
So you've heard the struggles, you've heard the successes, and this episode is done. But there's still so much more to come and so much more to learn. Head on over to thechiropracticphilanthropist.com and sign up for our newsletter, where you'll receive free practice building tips and strategies, including how to market your practice with your very own podcast and so much more. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time on The Chiropractic Philanthropist.